to take us a little bit further down this journey is the CEO of NEMISA. Please put your hands together for Mymoena Ismail.
The reason why I chose this particular topic to share with Vision 2030 is just recently, 3rd and 5th of May, South Africa hosted the World Economic Forum. And we had many leaders on our shores. What was fascinating was that when you look at the searches, the Google searches in the month of May around the 4th Industrial Revolution, it basically skyrocketed in South Africa. So it meant that something was happening. Someone was talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution. And I think as NEMISA being a state-owned entity reporting directly to the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, responsible for e-skilling South Africa by 2030, which is aligned to our National Development Plan, we felt it was important for us to basically start this discussion around the 4IR. So the question is basically, what is the 4IR? And literally, where are we in terms of 4IR? We've seen that we're struggling. The discussions that we've said, is South Africa ready for 4IR? Is Africa ready for the 4th Industrial Revolution? But the reality is that we are already experiencing the mobile moment. And the mobile moment basically says that we're moving towards one mobile phone per citizen, or at least at this point in time, you're finding that some citizens have more than one mobile phone already. But we're seeing the evolution from the first industrial revolution, which started basically with the first mechanical loom, right through to artificial intelligence robotics. But what is fascinating and what is more important is not necessarily the timelines, but the degree of complexity of these emerging revolutions. What does that say to countries? It basically says that it's going to require good governance, but more importantly, it's going to require skilled people in order to compete globally, but also remain relevant. At the same time, we can't ignore the evolution of the mobile phone, which started in the late 1980s. And what is fascinating for me in this particular slide is how the conversions have taken place in the mobile sphere. But what is more important is the symbiotic relationship between research, standardization, and commercialization. And therein lies an opportunity for South Africa going forward. Deputy Minister earlier on indicated the fact that we need to move away from being consumers of technologies or services, but start looking in terms of becoming innovative. And I do believe that this is an opportunity for South Africa to exploit. So what is the Industrial Revolution? Well, we do know that it is about the conversions of different technologies, seamlessly merging physical, digital, biological spheres that has an impact directly on socioeconomic factors in our society. We see the use of robotics, bitcoins, or digital currency coming into play. We're seeing crowdfunding, crowdsourcing coming into the equation. Internet of Things, I think, was mentioned earlier on. And as a result of these technologies, we're seeing new products and services emerging. And again, previous speakers cited already the impact of Uber, Airbnb, as well as Facebook, as new services of this 4th Industrial Revolution. So what are the impacts, or the possible impacts for South Africa? And there are advantages, but there's also risk. From an advantage perspective, yes, there is connection, efficiency, improving lives, new opportunities. From a risk perspective is that if we don't take up the opportunity to adapt, something is going to happen. We are going to fall behind. We are going to be overtaken by those who move much faster than what we do. At the same time, the risk is basically, if our people are not ready to take up the advantage, if they don't have the necessary skills to exploit the technology, then it poses a risk for the country as well as for our society. Inequality may grow. The haves and the have-not, I think that was basically the terminologies used during the time of the digital divide. But at the same time, new security concerns is basically emerging for us. And according to David Mead, who is the president of Cisco Africa, he stated at the recent WEF forum that the 4th Industrial Revolution is synonymous with digitization and internet connectivity. And again, he emphasizes that it is an opportunity for South Africa to move forward quite quickly. More importantly, it allows us to become innovative, bring about new business models, and increase our service delivery. And again, these were issues that was raised earlier by our political heads. So what do we know about 4IR? 4IR, we can see, is disruptive. It's changing the way that we're doing things. More importantly, it's impacting all societies and sectors. It's not just the ICT sector. And therefore, what is important for countries, organizations, as well as communities to consider is a prioritization of skills. And this is paramount. More importantly, and we've heard earlier on, the need for partnerships. Again, these are opportunities for us to leverage going forward. So gearing up, how do we gear up in South Africa and Africa for the 4IR? I think we should applaud our Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services for the work that they've done in the area of ICT policy. We do have the SA Connect, we do have the white paper on the integrated ICT policy. We've heard that we are about to launch the broadband phase 1 pilot in the OR Tambo district. However, we also need to look in terms of roaming charges and the termination rates. Europe just recently, I think it's a week ago, that they've dropped all roaming charges in the whole of Europe. And these are things that South Africa needs to consider as well as Africa. Harmonization of SIM registration regime is something that we have to look at. So for those of you who can recall the Boko Haram incident, the reason why government was very difficult to track these individuals was because they were operating on illegal SIM cards. And this is basically what we need to avoid going forward. Cybersecurity is going to be on the increase. Cisco has already indicated that we have about 19.7 billion online cyber risks per day. We have to look in terms of mainstreaming of our ICT in integration projects. E-services, we need to look in terms of increasing them, but more importantly for us is we have to address our e-skills, human capital development. So whilst we're doing good in some instances on our WEF e-readiness rankings, where we are lagging behind as a country is in our e-skills development space, and we do need to give attention to that. Digital migration is something we need to conclude on as South Africa because it does have potential for South Africa's future. I read recently the Mining Weekly magazine, and what was interesting was this particular quote, where it says that what is being done with the technology and not the technology itself is the essence of the 4th industrial revolution, which has at its core the use of data, the ability to analyze and apply the data. And that has significant implications for South Africa going forward, especially from a skills perspective. So what have we done thus far, or what does the 4IR say? Well, it basically says to NEMISA, firstly, as a catalytic organization, we have to do much more than what we're doing, but more importantly, we can't do what we're doing on our own. We have to influence our curriculum, whether it is within our education space or in the business environment. We have to relook at that. We have to influence our approaches to teaching and learning. We must move towards developing new skills and competencies. And these are, we've seen in the previous examples, the kind of skills that is going to be required. Big data analytics, critical thinking, problem solving, complex, the whole notion just around the computational thinking is going to become critical for us going forward. Finland, Switzerland, Sweden, Israel, Singapore, the Netherlands, and the United States are basically the forerunners, according to the Global IT report of WEF 2016. And they're already seeing the benefits of investing in ICT. But it's not just the infrastructure, it's also the investment within the human capacity that is making them the forerunners in the world. Google has recently shown that There are more than 3 billion searches per day on Google. The highest was in 2011. I've mentioned earlier on Cisco, 19.7 billion online threats per day. Education, as we know, is obsolete. It still acts as a gateway to knowledge that is no longer needed with the rise of the internet. And here, the Khan Academy is an example of a new way of education. So for nearly a decade, we've been talking about the opportunity of technology that it presents in terms of unlocking effective citizen service delivery, enhancing customer experience, and bringing about innovative solutions for a better life for all. But what we did not know at the time was how the entire system of production, management, and governance is affected. More importantly, the societal impact was largely missed. And therefore today, for South Africa and Africa, it's going to be important that when we relook at moving towards our digital economy, we have to take into account issues affecting our youth, unemployment in particular, and harnessing our human potential for innovation going forward. The Department of Communications in 2013 launched the Ikamva National E-Skills Institute as a concept. And this was directly aligned to the National Development Plan. So I guess if someone was to give me a test and see whether I am, I know what sits in the National Development Plan, well, at its core is human capacity development. At its core, it's also about a connected society, the need for infrastructure to bring about social improvement, better service delivery for our people, and spur innovation, local innovation. Today, we are in the process working with the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services. We are working with them in terms of developing the required enabling legislation for e-skills. I think if we look in terms of, if I was to ask people in the room, how many of you are actually doing e-skills, you'll all put up your hand. But if we were to ask the question, how many of you are actually working in our underserved areas, not many of you are visible there. So when we talk about 22 million people that do not have access to the internet, there's also 22 million people that don't necessarily understand the digital agenda. However, we have to date, and we're proud to say that as a catalytic organization, we've given rise to a decentralized model for e-skills in the country. We have developed local evidence-based research centers at our co-labs, which are hosted at our local universities. Interestingly enough, in the last 4 to 5 years, we have skilled just more than 22,000 people in new skills and competencies that was not in South Africa. And however, we need to do much more in order to make South Africa an e-skill society by 2030. Looking at some of the threats and the opportunities, we note that there's a massive opportunity from an economic perspective in terms of cybersecurity. We don't necessarily have the skills for that, and I think earlier on the Deputy Minister mentioned the fact that we lack spectrum management skills in the IT space, and this is the area that NEMISA is basically embarking in or influencing with our partners. But cybersecurity is a real issue because it is around data security, not only in terms of government, but also in terms of organizations and the customer data that needs to be protected. Digital skills, we know, enable service growth. We've seen some examples already in terms of where that is. However, it is going to be important for us to see it as part of the transformation, moving the low-skill and low-paid jobs to high-skill and high-paid jobs going forward. Cecilia Bala of the World Economic Forum mentioned that going forward it will be important to reinforce data gathering efforts in order to more closely track the distributional impacts of the current transformation. This will make it possible to shape the digital economy in a way that delivers broad-based gains. At a country level and from a competitive perspective, that's true, but at the same time, we have to look in terms of how do we apply it in South Africa. especially in those provinces outside of Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN. So here's a question. Is 4R synonymous with digitization and the internet? Is there potential to drive South Africa forward? I guess the answer to both these questions is yes. But what stands out is basically, where is the platform for collaboration? And earlier on, we heard the need for business, government, education, civil society to work together, which in South Africa we call the quadruple helix. In countries such as Finland, they call it the triple helix, because they focus more in terms of government, education, and business. We also have to look in terms of the opportunity to make 4R work for our local conditions. Inequity, poverty, and unemployment, especially among our youth. And this is the opportunity for us. We're sitting with quite a high number of unemployed youth who do have the potential. And the question is basically, where is the platform to create the potential for them to unleash their innovation? And so as the National Catalytic Organization, NEMISA would like to invite you all to join us in our plight to make South Africa an e-skilled nation by 2030. I'd like to end off my presentation with this picture. And literally what it says, it's not for canary lovers, even though I am a canary lover or bird lover. All it says is that in the mining industry, the miners used to use the canary and they used to take them into the mines, and they use the canary as carbon monoxide detectors. Today, the canary has been replaced by carbon monoxide devices. And again, the issue that is coming through, it is not about the technology, it is about how we're utilizing the technology that is going to put South Africa on the map. Thank you.
Vision 2030, the National Development Plan. It's our future. Let's go for it, man.